Again, my name is Ashaki Binta, and I've been a union organizer. I'm retired now for, I guess, 15, 16 years or more. And the reason why it wasn't more is because we wanted to build unions in the South, to organize the South. So I became one of the organizers of Black Workers for Justice, the work here in the South. So I've served in a number of positions there over the years. And a part of our work has been to look at building a different kind of unionism to address the concrete problems that we have here in the South. And I can tell you from our organizing in Black Workers for Justice, we had two fundamental questions that we were looking at from the beginning. And in order to address them, we formed a Women's Commission, that was back in 1986, and a Trade Union Commission. So from the very beginning, our vision was that we needed to help build a new trade unionism in the South, which is what we're calling social movement unionism. So that was a part of our vision from the beginning. And we worked with a lot of unions back in those days, bringing them into the South, asking them to pass resolutions, to put in resources, to come and work with us and organize workers here in the South. And, you know, a number of them did come down. But the one that we were able to really build a relationship with and an alliance with was UE. And we found that with UE, we actually had certain principles in common. Fundamental to that was rank and file leadership in the union. That was the basis. So one of our alliances, was developed with UE, and that was the foundation that eventually created UE150. And I'm so pleased too that we've had a couple of sisters here from UE work in Virginia, the Hampton Roads area. That's been very important. And we're still building there. I was so glad they were able to be here, this weekend in order to get a sense of the history of UE150. As UE150 is the example and the prototype and the basis of building social movement unionism here in the South. I wanted to show a couple of excerpts to go back to the beginning of UE150, just to remind us of where we came from. And so this video was developed, birth of the union, and it goes back to how UE actually began in the UNC system. And, it's 20 minutes long, so we can't show that obviously right now. But I wanted to take, if you bear with me, maybe 6 minutes of it to remind us of the actual basis of history. And then we'll talk a little bit, go through this tenets of social movement unionism and the importance of UE150 for the whole region here and the work that we've done. So we'll start the first segment there. Can everybody see it?
We keep the floors clean. We clean the toilets. We do everything positive for the university. And what we get in return?
We have one person in a port. They got this big, large building. One person has to clean this whole going by themselves.
I've been working for North Carolina A&T State University for 22 years. And all of a sudden, I was transferred, on a night shift from 10:30 at night until 7 in the morning.
everybody's in the same boat here. Whether it be housekeeping, whether it be landscaping, whether it be M&O, we're all in the same boat. A lot of people's having to work 2 jobs, a lot of people are still qualifying for welfare.
Familiar faces in
there.
there.
We're going to make a decent way we can go home and spend time with our families, just like management does.
In North Carolina.
And laying the foundation for this question of social movement unionism. When we bring this question of social movement unionism up, it's not just slogans or phrases that we're bringing up. This is something that we took seriously and studied. Not only did we build an alliance with the UE, we also built an alliance with the international labor organization called Transnational Information Exchange, which was also an international union network that was building trade unionism from the bottom up, led by the rank and file. And so we were able to work with them, and that took us into many parts of the world examining this question of how unions need to be built, since here in the South, as our brother stated earlier, we're up against the system. We're up against the system here, and not just a single employer. So the fact I worked for UE, when I retired, I'd been at UE for 11 years. And the first several years we worked on bringing North Carolina, charges against North Carolina in the international arena for having this law on the books that prevents us from having collective bargaining rights in the public sector. And we won a sanction against North Carolina under the ILO, the International Labor Organization, but they have no enforcement mechanisms at the international level, as we've seen these last few years with the attacks on Gaza and the Palestinian people, that at the international level there's no enforcement unless the U.S. wants to enforce something, and they only enforce stuff that's, to their benefit. So we were able to win that, however, and then we worked, I worked another 6-7 years, particularly among the city workers, and we were able to win some important victories around the state with regard to that as well. But UE150, it's just impossible to underestimate the importance of a union like this developing from the bottom up, the rank and file, without any laws in favor of our ability to change our conditions. And despite all of that, we still have been able to build, and now we've been, more than 25 years in existence. So this is very important, what we've done in UE150, and we shouldn't take it for granted at all. We have to continue to build. So our founding of the Southern Workers Assembly was to help us to implement this social movement unionism, or what we called back then in the Trade Union Commission, the new unionism in the South. And we were building from, that perspective. And so these are some of the tenets that, we've developed over the years. We went to Brazil to study the development of social movement unionism there. We went to South Africa, meeting with COSATU and studying how the union movement was developed there. Union movements that develop where people are oppressed as a people. In any of these countries, of course, we know the similarity between the history of the U.S. South and South Africa. We went to Mexico, a number of places throughout Europe, other locations, Argentina we were in. So we've studied this question and, are understanding it in a way to implement it here in the South, that we must have a different approach. And that is, we've got to fight to build unions. What I want to do now is only 7/10 there. There probably could be others. We could refine this a little more. But if we could have, just quickly, talk a little bit about each one of these. Would someone mind reading number 1? And forgive me for the spelling there. It should be rank and file leadership.
Number 1, rank and file leadership. Leadership of the new trade unionism, social movement unionism from below, in the U.S. South from the rank and file workers on the shop floor or in the workplace. Organized in workplace workplace committees, shop steward systems, engaged in shop floor struggles, formation of unions without a contract or recognition, and in the fight for recognition.
That's right. So the foundation of the unionism that has to develop in the South, we can't continue to go through these NLRB elections that we're continuing to lose, which now has been shifted totally in favor of the employer. So we're defeated before we even begin. But UE150's experience is to build a union and begin to take on struggles on the shop floor, issues that the workers are confronted with. And that kind of forms the basis of, fighting for recognition. And we get some recognition by, some of the things that we win. But we need a movement throughout the whole South in order to bring about recognition of new trade unions with different principles than we've had. The history of trade unionism in this country was to remove all vestiges of the fight back, all vestiges of the political questions that were confronting working people as unions were built, to remove those totally from the union, so that now a union's not reflective of representing the interests of the working class or working people. It's only representing the interests of its own members, if that, in a top-down approach to it. That doesn't develop, the leadership of the rank and file, that doesn't deal with addressing issues on the shop floor. So this is some of the principle that we want. Somebody could read number 2 for us, please.
Centrality of the Black working class, and including unity between all oppressed nationality workers and allies in the U.S. South in the fight against national oppression, racism, sexism, and discrimination. International working class unity and solidarity.
Now, a lot of people ask us, well, what do we mean by the centrality of the black working class? I mean, what are you trying to say? Black people was better than any other of the other people or something? No, we're not saying that at all. We're all human beings. Whether we're indigenous, we're black, we're Mexican, Chicano, Puerto Rican, whatever we are, Asian, white, we're all human beings, and we all have the right to dignity and respect. But this question of the centrality of the black working class looks at the real history of this country and the position that black people have been in, and the role from slavery until now that the black community has played. So we can't remove politics and the conditions that our people have suffered from the equation here. I tell you one, to me, something that's very important in this last election where Trumpism came back in, the black community was the only sector in this country that voted against Trump in the majority. That was the black community, the only one that voted no to Trump. 80 to 90% of us voted no on Trump. He was still able to get in because the rest of everybody else, went with it. That's very important. So our history around the question of democracy, democratic rights, is very important. So understanding there are about 20 million or so black workers in this country, more than 11 million of them are here in the South. So that means the majority of black people are in the South, and the majority of working black people are in the South. That makes the South very important to our overall conditions as a people. So it makes us central as workers to the conditions of black people, no matter where we are in the country. So that's a question of the centrality, fighting. So we can't, remove those kinds of political questions from what we're doing, what we stand for as a union. We have to organize that as a part of what we're doing. That's why. When you look at the question of the national labor movement, when they brought in all of the right to work laws and all of that stuff, they anchored them right here in the South, primarily during the Jim Crow era, as they were chasing out, any vestiges of, political working class fight back from the unions. This is part of what they were doing, structuring this region so that unions couldn't grow. So what does that mean? It meant that nationally, the whole union structure in this country has been impacted. And so now we're down to 10% of all workers? I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's not what it should be. And we don't have the same kind of rights as unions that they even do in parts of Europe, European unions. basic fundamental rights. Our union movement here has been weak. Hundreds of millions of dollars, probably billions of dues. How much of it is being applied to the South to help unions build, to help bring the working class forward and to represent working class interests? So that's why we say that we have to understand the history of this country, the history of the South, what our actual conditions are, and that means we got to start with the question of discrimination. Not attach it on later so it won't be divisive, but to start with it, that we have to correct this and fight around this. And this is why we say the centrality of the black working class is very important to rebuilding the union movement in this country. Let's go to the number 3, if someone wouldn't mind reading.
Fight for in the interest of the working class. Unions and workplace organizations that unite with and represent the interests of working people in the workplace and in the community. Building unity with the struggle in the community.
Yeah, I think we had a sister here from the environmental, I'm sorry, I missed her presentation, but we have to think in terms of the union representing the working class broadly, not just our own situation in our own workplace, but are we standing up, around questions that impact all of us? So, healthcare as a human right or Medicare for all, these are the kind of questions that we have to take up and fight for them in the interest of the whole class. We're talking about somebody owning, 10 houses and 2 jets and all of this stuff. That's how this country is structured when you got millions of people out here living on the streets. How can this exist? So it's not right. We have to take a stand on that. So we get involved and build unity with the community around fights that matter in our communities. The AI fight, that may be one of them. And there are others that impact the whole working class, no matter. So that we have to take that up. Let's go to the next one quickly. Someone wouldn't mind reading number 4.
Industrial and sector-based organization, organizing in key southern industries and services across the South in the struggle for power.
This question of the struggle for power is very important. So how do we get that tipping point that we were talking about earlier, where we can put the pressure? If we're not organized in the workplace, if we don't understand the key industries that drive the economy in the South and throughout the country, then we won't be able to put the pressure on capital that has to be put on it to force changes so we can win Medicare for all, which we should have. So it's very important that we return to industry and sector-based organizing. That's very important. So the public sector is the sector we want to organize across the whole South, even though every southern state doesn't have a law against collective bargaining, but most public sector workers don't have collective bargaining rights no matter where they are in the South. There's very few places. So we need to organize around that and bring that question forward. The private sector, the same thing. So we have different industries. Now they're moving, and we have a whole project around this in the Southern Workers Assembly, but they're moving a lot of auto, and they've been moving it for years, into the South. So somebody now that's working in Detroit or somewhere is making, $45, $50, $60 an hour. And down here, they're bringing the industries down here and hiring workers in the east to produce these electric vehicles. And they're want to pay them $20, $25. So what's the difference there? I mean, we've got to really look at these type of questions and organize around industries. Number 5, please.
Anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, anti-patriotism. The economic, social, and political systems of oppression and exploitation of the United States, both at home and abroad.
Well, we got to call a spade a spade. This capitalist system is not working for the people. It's not working for the people. You have teachers, for example, in New York making maybe $90,000 a year and doing the exact same job in Mississippi. They might be making $35,000 or $45,000. It's the same job. What's the difference? That's capitalism. That's the exploitation. They're deriving more exploitation from workers in the South compared to workers in other parts of the country. Yes, that due to the economic crisis, some of that's been limited, but that's, the top going down. It's not the bottom coming up. So it's very important to understand that this is a system, capitalism, that, puts profits before people. We need a society that puts people, that's built around the needs and interests of people. All of us as human beings, we have that right as human beings. But this system won't allow that to happen. So these are the type of ways we need to educate ourselves and understand what our fight is really about. Anti-imperialism. That's when you have an administration that sends the army into Venezuela, kidnaps the president of that country and tells them, we're taking over your oil just because we want to. Hey, oil companies, why don't y'all come in and take whatever you want now? That's imperialism. Why are we doing that? That's illegal internationally, and it's wrong, but it's all over the place. It's kind of destroying the people like they've done with the Palestinians. We have to take position on these type of questions. If we don't take positions, then we're allowing this to be turned back on ourselves. So very important. Here we are on the question, and this country was founded on this, leaving women, out of things. Now they're bringing back the question of, well, we think most women should be at home and having children. Well, we are having children and we are at home, but we're also working. But now our rights have been stripped. So people have died because we don't have reproductive rights anymore. They decided to take that away, after all these years. So that's patriarchy. That's, male supremacy and white supremacy. And these kinds of questions are what we're confronted with. And we have to take a position on these things and oppose them. So equal pay for equal right. Equal rights for equal pay. So we need this. Let's talk about the next one, number 6, please.
Independence from the Democratic and Republican Party, both of which operate in the interest of the bosses, corporations, and the ruling class. That's right. That's where we are.
Independence. When we say independence from the Democratic and Republican parties, we don't mean, well, I want to be a Republican. I'll be a Republican this time. When there's no programs in the Republican Party that represent the interests of any people whatsoever. I mean, just horrific. It's fascism, and they have taken over, as much as they can of that party to implement, this corruption and stealing and brutality, bringing about voting in interests of having these ICE people attacking people that are working every day, kidnapping them off the street, going in their jobs, taking them, going in their homes, stealing people and sending them abroad somewhere. These things are wrong. We have to take a position against these kinds of things. So neither the Democratic nor the Republican parties represent the interests of working people. And we've got to see that and begin to build movements that are dealing with and addressing, these kind of questions that are impacting us as a people. They've stripped voting rights. What happened to card check? We had Democrats elected. But they couldn't even come up with card check. What happened to George Floyd? They were supposed to have a George Floyd bill to keep police from just killing people whenever they want to. Did anything pass? That was Democrats in. We didn't get it. Nothing. So we have to start looking at these type of questions, and dealing with that. Let's do the last one there, obviously. That's right. So we need to have, have these right to work laws overturned, reestablish the rights of people to vote, basic human rights and the right to vote. And the right to vote includes being able to vote on a union contract that you've negotiated with your employer. Every workplace should have a union. Every worker has the right to a union. And we have to organize on that basis. And we have to organize all of the workers, regardless of who they are. They're gay, straight, white, black. All workers have a right to join the union, and we should be building the union collectively and together and fighting for the rights and interests of people based on being workers. So those are the basic tenets around which, we structured the Southern Workers Assembly, and we need UE to be UE members to be involved in these things, and maybe there's a way to, change the approach that we have. We know that, a lot of us in our communities, we are working 2 and 3 jobs. Some people have that. Or if we're not working 2 and 3 jobs, with people have kids, people have elderly parents that they have to take care of, like me. So, there's a lot that people have on them, and so we can't do everything. So it means we have to have a division of labor within the local, that we ask some people to participate and represent UE in the Southern Workers Assembly. We have other people that may represent UE in the environmental justice movement. And we have other people that may represent UE, they're on the executive board or they're chief shop steward. Division of labor within the union so that we're able to help take these struggles that our working people are confronted with forward, and people can take on, some tasks as possible. So these are things that we should continue to discuss, and I want to just thank you guys for having me and inviting me. Really, I have so much love and respect for UE150 and what you've been doing, and I'm so proud of you. So proud of the work that you all have done over the years. How many strikes have we had?
Not enough.
And not enough. That's right. And nobody was fired. And we can build.